we were going against Britain, who had colonies all over the world, well-trained soldiers and navy and generals who knew the art of war frontwards and backwards and written books. I mean, and we were just some ordinary folk. People like me and you, some farmers, some city folks, just ordinary people, definitely the underdogs. We weren't trained as a whole nation like what we were going against. Underdog. You understand underdog? Anybody ever seen the movie Hoosiers? It's kind of like Hoosiers. You know, the little school in Indiana where they have like one national championship. They have this little school that's just got a handful of kids going against these big schools, and they end up winning a national championship. It's based on a team back in, I think, 1954 that did that. But it's just that underdog story. Who likes an underdog? We seem to pull for underdogs, don't we? I always pull for underdogs. Today we're going to get an underdog story of a prophet by the name of Elijah. And he's going to go up against 850 prophets, the prophets of Baal and Asherah. And he's going to go up there in a contest. They're going to have a barbecue contest, so to speak. They're going to have a cook-off. And they're going up there, and he is definitely the underdog. 850 against 1. It doesn't sound like good odds, does it? Are those betting odds? I'll bet on the one when the one's got God on his side, right? Because when you stand with God, you're never, ever, ever outnumbered if you're standing with God. Because last week we learned what? Our God is able. You remember something, that's good. Even if, right? Even if he doesn't do it the way we want him to do it. So good, so you remember. But today we're talking about Elijah, and before we get into that story, I want to give you the background story leading up to where he's at in the story. Ahab is the king. Now, Ahab's not a good king, he's an evil king. As a matter of fact, the Bible tells us he's done more evil than anybody else before him. Right? So he's not a good guy, not a nice guy, evil king, does what he wants to do, doesn't listen to God, does what he wants to do instead of what God wants him to do. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not something I want on my tombstone. Here lies Ken, the evil doing. It's just not good. But anyway, he's not a nice guy. And he's married to a girl from another country called Jezebel. You know, I've heard of Jezebel before. Just the name doesn't bring good. The Jezebel from another country, and she brought her god, Baal, who is the god of rain and harvest, to the country, and that is the one that she wants to promote as the god, the main god of the time. And of course, Ahab does like many men. You know, he goes, happy wife, happy life. So he's going along with it. And in this case, it's not a good idea. Normally, men, that is a good idea, happy wife, happy life. But in this case, no, it's not a good idea. So they're promoting the god Baal. They're building temples around the area for Baal and putting down worship of the one true God. They're kind of discouraging that. So God sends Elijah to him, tells him there's going to be a drought. He's not doing what he's supposed to. So Elijah goes and tells him there's going to be a drought. There's not going to be any water unless it comes from my mouth. And that's the way it's going to be. And he leaves. And God takes Elijah away because, of course, that's not going to be real popular when you don't send any water. And he keeps him safe for a period of about 3 years. He has him in a cave. Ravens bring him food. I'm just giving you the story from the book. Ravens bring him food twice a day. And then he goes and lives with a widow for a while. And she provides food for him. So God takes care of Elijah during this time. And then it's time to go back and see the king again. So he sets up through the palace administrator by the name of Obadiah. He meets with him and says, "Want to see the king?" He says, "I'll set it up." They set it up. So now we're going to get to the scripture. And Elijah is going back. There's been a drought for 3 years. He's going back to see the king. And let's see what happens here. Verse 16. Are you with me? So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" "I have not made trouble for Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel and meet me at Mount Carmel. and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab went, sent out word throughout all of Israel, assembled the prophets at Mount Carmel. Now what's just happened there is Elijah just threw down the gauntlet. He just went and picked a fight. That's what he's doing. Any of y'all ever seen Braveheart? You remember that scene where the generals are coming across, and then the lords of the land from Scotland are going out there to meet, try to determine terms so they can just both walk away from the battlefield. And Braveheart is about to ride out there, and he says, "Where are you going?" He goes, "I'm going to pick a fight." He said, and that's what's happening here. Elijah just went and picked a fight. Now, like any good fight, happens in the schoolyard, word spreads pretty quickly, right? Word spreads pretty quickly. You remember when there was going to be a fight, when the bully picked on the little kid, said, "I'll see you after school." What happens, right? It goes throughout all the schools. There'll be a fight at school. There'll be a fight behind it. So he's going to get, what? It's going to be bad, man. I can't even believe you. I hope you don't show up. It's going to be bad. Well, that's what's happened. 850. He said, yeah, he challenged 850 to 1. It's not going to be good. This is going to be bad. And so he goes. But what they don't know, and what they don't realize, is he ain't coming by himself. Right? He's bringing God with him. And you can face insurmountable odds when you have God on your side. And when you realize it. Because just like we talked about last week, he knows his God's able. He has all the confidence in the world that he's all right. And he's okay. And so he shows up. And there they are. They were introducing this as a fight. They say, on this side, we have 100 pounds soaking wet, Elijah. And people probably would boo because they blamed him for the drought. On this side, we have the 850 prophets, and they probably would cheer for that. And then the mic would have come down, and Mike would have said, "Let's get ready to rumble." And the fight was on, right? But before they start the fight, Elijah steps up, takes the mic, and says, let me say something real quick. This is where we pick it up, verse 21. And Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. And if Baal is God, follow him." But the people said nothing. Silence. Silence almost speaks for itself, doesn't it, sometimes? I think the people were silent because they knew. I mean, they knew that the Lord was God. But you know, they were having a good time following Baal. See, because Baal was a really corrupt religion, just like Mardi Gras on steroids all the time. I mean, a lot of immorality. They had temple prostitutes. I mean, this was a good time. I know what's right, but you know, this is really fun. I know what's good and what I should do, but this is really fun. This isn't so bad. How many of us are like that today? We know what's right, but this is really fun. Right? I really like doing this. We know this is wrong, but I know, but this is fun. Right? How much of our country's gone that way? How much of our country knows what's right? But this is really fun. It's fun doing it this way, right? How many of us have forgotten our roots? We know what God would have us to do. But this is really fun. That's what's going on there. Tug of war. You ever been in those situations where you got a tug of war going on in your heart? Or decide you do what God wanted you to do, but man, that looked like a whole lot of fun over there. You had to make a decision, right? Well, that's what he's saying. How long are you going to waver? How long will you waver? Now, waver in Hebrew means limp. You know that? It means to limp. And when you have a limp or you have a bad leg, what do? Right? You wait. Go back and forth. Right? And that's kind of what they did. They knew what the right thing to do was, but this was really fun. Kind of look like somebody with a limp, right? He said, how long are you going to limp along spiritually and not make a decision? You know what God would have you do. You know what God would have you to be. How long? How long will this go on? So he said his piece. And he's asked the question. He's got him thinking. And then he steps up and he says, verse 22. And then Elijah said to them, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left. But Baal has 450 prophets. Give us 2 bulls. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves. Let them cut it into pieces. Let them put it on wood and do not set it on fire. I will prepare the other bull, put it on wood, and not set it on fire, set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call the name of the Lord. The God that answers by fire, he is God. And all the people said, what you say is good. In other words, they're saying, that's fair. That's a fair way to decide. You know what he did? He just set the terms of the fight. And what's strange is when you set the terms of the fight, you would think you would set terms of a fight that are in your favor. Right? If I'm good with a pistol, I'm not going to choose a knife. Right? And what he said is this. He said, not only am I going to set the terms of the fight, but I'm going to set them in your favor. You know, your God is the God of weather. Your God is the God of rain and controls all that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have something that has to do with weather. So we're going to set these altars up, and then we're going to call on our God. And your God, the God of weather, rain, lightning, have him come and light your fire. And then I'll call on mine. And whoever lights it, that is a true God. That's like going having a basketball game and saying, we'll play at your court, use your ball, and you can invite the referees. Everything's in your favor. I want no excuses from you of why you didn't win. That's what he's done here. He said, I'm putting everything in your favor. You have me outnumbered. We're going to play on your court. We're going to play with your ball. We're going to play with your referees. And I'm still going to win. That's confidence, isn't it? That's a lot of confidence. So let's see what happens. At noon, let's see right here. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Sorry about that. Okay. Elijah said to Baal, Elijah said to the prophet, sorry about that. Choose the bull, I lost my place. Choose the bull and prepare it first. You can even go first. Then, since there are many of you, call the name of your God. Do not light the fire. So they took the bull, given to them, they prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal. From morning till noon, Baal, answer us, they shouted. So there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to talk to them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is your God. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. You know, maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears as it was their custom until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesizing until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. What's he doing there? Any of you ever engage in smack talking? In my day, I probably talked too much smack, but I never knew what the result was going to be. But I liked to talk. It was just fun. And that's what he's doing here. He's talking smack, but the difference is that he's confident in what it's going to be. He's like, where's your God? Maybe he's taking a nap. Yell a little louder. Maybe he's off on a trip. You want to get your cell phone out. Call him. What's going on? He's not there. Where's your God? Where's your God? He's taunting them. There's a difference between talking smack and talking smack because you're confident. Like I said, I talk a lot of smack, but I never was confident of the outcome. I mean, I believed in myself, but I didn't know for sure how it was going to turn out. But there are some smack talkers who I've seen do it. You ever seen Larry Bird? I mean, you remember, some of you young people remember Larry Bird, phenomenal basketball player. One time he was known for talking smack. But one time on the court, the Celtics were down by 2 points, and they called timeout. It was just a few seconds left. They called timeout, and as he walked by the guy who was guarding him, he pointed to a spot and said, "See that spot? That's the spot I'm going to catch the ball in. When I catch the ball, I'm going to turn and I'm going to shoot. I'm going to shoot it over you, and I'm going to make the shot. And it's going to go in, and we're going to win." And he walked to his bench. So the timeout was over. Larry Bird, the whistle blew, inbounds pass. Sure enough, Larry Bird ran to that spot. He caught the ball, he turned, he shot over the defender and made the game-winning shot. Now that's confidence. That's confidence. And that's the kind of confidence this guy had. But he knew his God was going to deliver. This is going to be a good day. There will be no doubt in anybody's mind when this thing was over that the Lord was God and the only God. Smack talk. Not saying it's a good thing, but sometimes it really adds a lot of flavor to the stuff. Let's see what happens then. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." He came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built the altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it large enough to hold 2 seahs of seeds. He arranged the wood and cut the bull into pieces and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 jars with water and pour it over the offering on the wood." "Do it again," he said, and they did it again. "Do it a 3rd time," he ordered, and they did it a 3rd time. The water ran down the altar and even filled the trench. So Elijah prepares a sacrifice. He gets ready for the barbecue. It's his turn. It's time to go from sideshow to showtime, right? But he tells them to put 12 jars of water on it. Now that's kind of baffling. Now I told y'all last week I'm not an outdoorsman. But I remember from my Boy Scout days that water and fire don't usually go together. And if you want to start a fire, you use dry kindling. Right? Am I wrong on that? Is anybody? That's the way I learned it. You want something dry, make it easy to light, right? Make it easy to start. But no. He says, "Go get 4 buckets of water and pour it on top. And do it again. And do it again." Leaving no doubt, this altar, this meat, everything around it was soaked. The water overflowed. It was in the trench all the way around it because he had dug a trench. In other words, he's saying, this is impossible, right? It's impossible for me to like this. There's no tricks here. I'm not going to do a little spark thing, a little magic. No, this is impossible for a man to start this at this point, correct? He's making sure everyone knows that this is going to be God that's going to take care of this. It's not going to be him. And then what happens? They all quit and go home, right? No, it never quite like that. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are the God of Israel, that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord. Answer me so that people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "Lord, the Lord is God, the Lord is God." Game over. Right? Was there any doubt? He had given them every chance, every opportunity. Played by their rules, drenched it with water, and yet God answered. And yet God answered. And he came and he made a statement. I'd say it was an exclamation point statement. Because he burned up the offering, he burned up the altar, he burned up the stones, the soil, and he licked up the water just for make a point. I'm not leaving nothing unturned. I am the Lord, your God. Make no mistake about it. He stood true. You know, Elijah had a lot of confidence that he would. I don't think there was any doubt in Elijah's mind that this was going to happen, that God was going to carry it through. But why is that? Why is that you think that he did it? Why do you think he had that kind of confidence? In my opinion, he did it because he had history. He had history with God that loved him and took care of him. You know, when he needed to be fed, God sent ravens to feed him. And then he sent a widow to feed him. God had taken care of him through the drought. Him and God were close. He had followed God's command, and God had delivered on everything that he had said. He had history, that relationship with God. Do you have that relationship with God? Are you confident enough to stand up for God? Are you confident enough to say you believe? You know, we just celebrated this country's birthday. And I wish I could say I thought this country was really going in the right direction, but I can't. I can't. Sadly enough, I can't say that. The morality, what we accept is everyday stuff nowadays, it's just kind of gotten out of hand. Yet we sit back and say, well, it's okay. It's not me. What can I do? I can't stand up. You know, I know what God wants. But it looks like I'm really having a good time over there. That's our response. There's no response. And sometimes we, like the crowd, we're silent. We just sit there as Christians, as followers. What should we be doing? Do we believe? Are we confident enough in what the Scriptures tell us to stand up and say, yeah, that's wrong. It's wrong. What you're doing is wrong. And I know it's not the popular thing to do. It's not the thing that's going to make you, maybe the most popular people with your coworkers or your friends. But you know what's right. How long will you waver? That's a big question. How long will you limp along spiritually because you're unable to commit wholly to your God? That's the question he asks. That's the question he asks the people then. That's the question that's asked of you today. How long will you limp along? How long will you waver? Or are you all in? Are you committed? Will you stand up when you see injustices done? When you see things that are going on? Because if we all sit silently, we're saying it's okay. We're saying it's okay. And it's not. It's not. For this country to have celebrations of many more birthdays, we have to make a change. And it starts with you. There's 47 folks here today. So I'm nobody. I can't do anything. I'm retired. I'm just trying to get by. But you have a voice. Use it. You can stand up and say, no, that's wrong. I don't believe that. You can say, that's right. And that's what I believe. Don't sit silently by while the world passes you by. Don't let this country change into something you're ashamed of. Be proud to be Americans. I'm proud of this country. I don't like where it's going. And that may not be a popular thing to say in public, but it's how I feel. It's how I feel. There are too many things going on that we just can't stand by and accept and say, well, that's okay, it's okay. It makes them happy. What about you and your beliefs? Where do they count? And where do they stand? Because you count too. And you're part of this great country. But you need to make your voices heard every day. in so many different ways. Opportunities will present themselves to you. You see, when Elijah stood up, and he, because of his confidence, and he made a stand, and he did all this, what was the end result? The end result was, A, God was with him and carried through on his promises. But B, the end result was this. The end result was this, that the people lay prostrate on the ground and said, the Lord is God. People's hearts were changed. We can change people's hearts. God can change people's hearts. We can be the tools he uses to do it. But not if we sit by in silence and say no. Let your voices be heard. Let them be proud. Let them be loud. If you want to talk some smack, talk some smack. It's okay. It's not too much. Don't hurt anybody's feelings. Okay. Because the Lord, your God, is able. And he's able then, and he's able now. And next week we're going to continue this story. So to me, it's a good ending. And now all God's people said,
Amen.